Welcome to 100 Yards of Football. I'm your host, Vincent Turner, and today we're going to highlight the Baltimore Ravens with our NFL team preview for 2021. If you like the video this evening, please comment and share it. And joining me is a very talented guy. He's one of the best high school football coaches in the state of Georgia. He knows all about defenses. He's got a long stay here, and he's very talented. And his name is Kevin the Bull Jones. So, if you like the video this evening, as we're going to break down the Baltimore Ravens of 2021, we'll surely appreciate it for you to come in and share. And before I get started, and I should have mentioned it this morning before I come aboard with Coach Jones, I'd like to say thank you to a young man that's been able to hold us together and took us to another level that we never, ever thought we would be. It's our producer, Mr. Jeremiah Long, out of the great state of Tennessee, Oak Ridge, Tennessee, in the house. So let's talk about the Baltimore Ravens. Coach Jones, break down the Baltimore Ravens from an offensive and defensive standpoint for 2021.
Well, welcome you guys. Good to see you again. Of course, Jeremiah, my guy from Oak Ridge, the man, the myth, the legend. Listen, we talk about the Baltimore Ravens, and everybody, it's amazing, Vincent, how sometimes people just want to, instead of finding the good in teams and the good in individual players and even the good in coaching, I like to think that we get a chance to highlight some of the positive things about what's going on with some of these teams, individual players, as well as coaches. And we talk about Lamar Jackson on an amazing team. I'm just astonished at how much criticism he gets sometimes. And it's crazy because this kid, in the short amount of time he's been in the NFL, has done some great things. And yes, in the NFL, you want to be able to throw that ball, but it's okay to have a dual threat quarterback who excites people. And after coming off an 11-5 season last year, Vincent, I think the Baltimore Ravens did a really good job of trying to upgrade the offensive side of football so they can put up some more points. And if they get the chance to get to that, they got knocked out last year by the Buffalo Bills. And it was because of offensive reasons. They lost 17-3 to the Buffalo Bills. So the Achilles heel has been the vertical passing game. I think the Ravens have done a fantastic job of addressing that. They got T. Martin. I'm sure you're familiar with that name, former quarterback of Tennessee Vols. T. Martin, a great guy. Had a pleasure meeting him so many times when he came to Atlanta on recruiting visits. Well, he's now the wide receivers coach. Also, they have Keith Williams, a pass game specialist. Now, sports fans, that is a new term that we are starting to hear in all of these coaching staffs talking about. Brady did it at LSU as pass game specialist, Joe Brady, and now on the NFL level. Of course, Brady's on the NFL level now with the Panthers, but now you hear it in the NFL, pass game specialist. What does that mean? That means that is one person that's getting paid quite a bit of money to learn how to attack opposing defenses strictly through the passing game, all of the weaknesses and strengths of the pass defenses, the players they need to attack, things of that nature. I think that means a lot, Vincent, because last year the Ravens were last. That's right, last in the number of pass receptions last year on the season. They only had 137, and they had a little over 1,700 yards, and that's out of all of the people on the offense side of the ball that caught passes. They had only 137 catches. That's including running backs, tight ends, as receivers, as well as the reception yards. So that's an area that they wanted to swell up in so they can, sustain the winning that they've been doing and give Lamar Jackson a chance to be successful. And Vincent, I think they did a fantastic job of giving him some pieces through free agency as well as in the draft to be able to pick offenses apart and make it so that Lamar Jackson doesn't have to do all the work. So I'm looking forward to seeing Rashad Bateman on the field, first-round draft pick out of Minnesota. He's already shown some great things as he's able to do in the passing game as far as route running and a lot of his toughness and his football IQ. And, of course, they got Sammy Watkins now. So now a lot of people think that's going to be the deep threat. But Vincent, I'll be quite frank with you. I think that that's going to be just the opposite. Sammy Watkins might be the mid-range receiver, and then you still have Hollywood Brown. He'll probably be the deep threat, and then you have Rashad Bateman to kind of fill out that trio, that three-headed monster that I think is going to be phenomenal. And another key acquisition that the Ravens got on the offensive side of the ball, they got Alex Villanueva from the Pittsburgh Steelers, a former All-Pro, and he is a master at being such a colossal offensive tackle on that edge, dealing with the game's top pass rushers. You got Keith Zeitler. Keith Zeitler was a offensive lineman that they got from the Denver Broncos. He was part of that Super Bowl team on the offensive line, and he's a great veteran presence. So what happens in that huddle from a coach's standpoint, Vincent? Now Lamar Jackson has some veteran ears with him where he wants to take control, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it's always comforting when you have that big dog up front on that line that says, Lamar, run it my way, or Lamar, throw it this way. You know, I got you, and I'm gonna make the play. You don't have to take off running unless it's ultimately necessary. And I think that's an important balance from a coaching standpoint when you have a sensational player such as Lamar Jackson. Yes, he has all the respect in the world from those people on the offense side of the ball as well as the team. However, that's your favorite word, Vincent. However, it's important to be able to have that lineman in the huddle that says, this play needs to go behind me, and we're going to get the first down. And guess what, Lamar? You might not have to run the ball. Save that run for another play with his 5 seconds left and his 4th and inches. But right now, we might have to get this close in the game and run the ball with J.K. Dobbins behind me, big fella, and I'll take you there. You don't have to tuck it and run all the time. And I just think that helps elevate his game because it takes more pressure off of him. Defensively, Vincent, they're sensational. Okay, of course, Marlon Humphreys and Marcus Peters, those twin monsters in the secondary, the safety area. One key note about those two guys, they had 31 pass breakups. They led the league in pass breakups. They've led it since 2019. That tells you about the veteran secondary presence they have. You know, on the defensive line, there's some guys that left in free agency. But the great thing about Coach Wink Martindale, and that 3-4 defense, and you know I love that, Vincent. There's so many moving parts of that thing that you can interject some people to have for a specific skill set. Mm-hmm. Okay, and with that happening, that allows those defenses to really tee off and come off that edge. And when you can play man coverage all day, whether it's off man or press man, who needs zone? So I really believe that this was a great draft for the Ravens. I think that free agent wise, they did some great things as far as adding some veteran leaders to that offense, including the offensive line. Juwan James, I forgot to mention him, a former big-time player who tore his Achilles heel and was out for the 2020 season. Vincent, if he can get back to his Pro Bowl status, the Ravens will have a fantastic offensive line, including Ben Cleveland from Georgia. Yes, from the Georgia Bulldogs. He's a mammoth offensive lineman, has very good feet. And for him to be interjected, you know, he went in the top 3 rounds of the draft for the Ravens. And for him to be able to take over, or should I say, help add to the veteran leadership on that offensive line, that's all Lamar Jackson was missing, because he had a makeshift staff last year. And if he gets a chance to have those veteran big dogs up front, you got those 3 monsters on the edge, and then you have J.K. Dobbins in the backfield. I tell you what, that sounds like there's a possibility that we could have those guys playing in the AFC Championship game against those Chiefs.
Well, you brought up some good points about the Baltimore Ravens. Same thing that I thought about when I'm looking over their team. And Coach, you know I keep it real, I keep it explosive, I keep it all in all. To me, Lamar Jackson is a guy. It's the only thing that's stepping away. He's got to improve his deep passing. They was last in the league in passing. The last game is the most game that everybody remembers, and this is why he's taking a lot of flack, the Buffalo game.
That's right.
And if he improves his passing with the weapons then brought in, I think he's going to take it to another level. And I think the Ravens will be in the Super Bowl based on the fact of what they got help for him in the offseason. He's got a very explosive offensive team that's very balanced. Strong running game, as you mentioned, Mr. J.K. Dobbins.
Mhm.
Gus Edwards is a quality backup. Warriors come out to play, eh? Then looking at the receiver position, like you said, I like Rashad Bateman out of Minnesota, Tifton, Georgia kid. Then
Right.
looking at Marquise Brown, 4x100, speed on the outside. Sammy Watkins, I like that acquisition because the best season that Sammy Watkins has had, he had it under Greg Roman, the offensive coordinator with the Ravens. But however, Coach, you didn't bring up that young stud that fell in the draft out of Oklahoma State, Tyler Wallace. We had over almost 3,400 career yards and come out of that water at Oklahoma State. James Washington, James Blackman, and a kid back in the day, Hartley Lee Dykes. That kid is a football player. Out of all the players that got the receiver position, watch that young man right there. And then, of course, I know it's hard for you to say something about a Georgia player, but you can't know this evening to Ben Cleveland because he's going to be a guy that's going to make everybody forget about Zeus, Orlando Brown, who went over to Kansas City. Now, from a defensive standpoint, Coach, they ranked 7th in the league last year. Calais Campbell, excellent football player. Brandon Williams, excellent football player. Derek Wolf, excellent leader. But it's one thing, though, they're in their 30s now. But I like what they got backing up. Justin Mabuki from Texas A&M. It's a player that goes after Mr. Mark Bass out of Lufkin, Texas. I told you I was going to throw that nugget out there to you. Then Brandon Washington, Texas Tech, guns up. He's going to be a football player. But what I really like about their defense, I like Patrick Queen. It's something about these linebackers. No offense, Coach, not out of Alabama, but LSU. Patrick Queen, 105 tackles last year. He's starting to come into that elite status, maybe in his second year. Then looking at the secondary. Oh, man, they got one of the best. Let me give love to Roll Tide. Marlon Humphrey is a player.
There you go.
It's elite. Then I like the safeties, Deshaun Elliott, and Chuck Clark. They made us forget about Earl Thomas. But the dog of that offense, he's been with 3 teams, but nobody's really gave him his credit. Marcus Peters is a player, warrior, all tied up in one. Warriors come out to play, eh? And think about this. He's out of Oakland, California. He's out of this area that, man, it's something in the water in Oakland, bro. He comes from the area of Marshawn Lynch, Gary Payton, MC Hammer. Went to the same high school as Bill Russell. If it's anything about Marcus Peters, he just needed to tone it down. But I like the Ravens. To me, it's very simple. You brought it up, Coach. It's all about Lamar Jackson improving in the passing game, throwing the long ball. Because they're going to run the football. They led the league in rushing, 191 yards a game. But they were dead last in passing. And, Coach, you know this. You've been coaching on a high level. You can run for so many years and for so long. But your legs going to start tearing. You got to be able to throw that thing in the pocket. That's just me. I'm not an expert. You the expert, Coach Jones. And I'm just saying, if the Ravens going to take a next step, I think Lamar Jackson's got to be able to throw the deep ball. Final words on the Baltimore Ravens today, Coach.
Well, you're absolutely correct. And just so I mentioned Schofield. Michael Schofield came from the Denver Broncos, where he was a Super Bowl performer for them. And Kevin Zeitler was a mauler offensive lineman, a veteran offensive lineman, all pro. So
yeah, he's a good player. No question about it.
You got several guys that, and if Juwan James gets back to being 100% eventually, and I've been hearing good things about him as far as just, recuperating from having that Achilles injury. And, the bigger you are, the longer it's going to take for you to heal. But Ronnie Stanley was also a very good performer for the Ravens on the offensive line before he had his injury. And then at the center position, you got Bradley Bozeman. And once again, we're talking about coming from, that Crimson Tide center. So, I'm going to throw that in. They're all over the place, V, and that's just what it is. But back to your question, the Achilles heel. Yes, the Ravens have got to be able to stretch the ball down the field. And I think that they have done a great job of addressing those needs. Now for everybody to get on the same page, and they gave Lamar Jackson some more toys to play with. And when you talk about giving him more toys to play with, then you talk about an offense that was ranked 32nd in the league last year in passing, 32nd in the league. That's where they ranked last year. Okay, and so be able to take care of that, put a Band-Aid on that and fix it is the greatest part of it. They were number one in the league in rushing, of course, with J.K. Dobbins and Lamar Jackson. But as you mentioned, that's not enough. And they still average a lot of points scored. So where are we now? Tough defense, replacing those guys you mentioned, Campbell, Gerard, those guys got to be replaced. In Gabwe, that big lineman they had gone. You know, they have people that have moved on. But guess what? Sports fans, Raven fans, they'll be ready. And it'll be great to see J.K. Dobbins really get more attention, because when you have more vertical threats, then sometimes people forget about those guys in the backfield. And let me mention one kid I didn't mention earlier that came out in the draft for the Ravens, Sean Wade out of Ohio State. Okay, he didn't have a very good game in the national championship game. He did not have a very good game. Some people think that he might be served better at safety, but hopefully, his confidence is up. His game is, worked on his game. Listen, iron sharpens iron. So even some of the best have had bad days, but he just had one bad game. But other than that, he is a very sturdy person at the corner. He's still, to me, an off-man cover guy. He's not what I would call a true press guy. But he can play some zone for them. But along with already having Humphreys and Peters, you can really put him in some other positions similar to the star position that we talk about all the time in the odd defensive front for Crimson Tide. And he can play that, because that star person has to be able to cover people. And it's not really a true corner. It's a safety body type person. But guess what? When you're good in the secondary, that back four, which turns into back five in nickel situations, you have a person that can play the run, heavy enough to play the run, and has ability to play in the slot. And I would like to see that out of him, Vincent. And hopefully the Ravens will test the waters at that, now that they will have a full training camp coming up the end of July and starting up in August. They get a good chance to see Wade and see if he fits into the program for them. And I think he's a fascinating player. He just had one bad game, and one bad game does not determine who you really are. So going up against Sammy Watkins and people such as that in practice, Hollywood Brown should definitely help him. Adafe Owe out of Penn State. Run, fast, long. A little undersized at 255, 260, but that's okay. They're going to put him they can put him with his hand down, or they can make him a rush backer, and he can fill some voids or be able to set the edge sometimes. So Queen can make some plays still from sideline to sideline or from tackle to tackle. So with all that being said, I see them as being a powerhouse this fall. It's going to be great to see Lamar Jackson with some more tools. And I would like to see the naysayers have to shut up. I would like them to stop talking about Lamar Jackson. Let him play. Give him a chance to just play and be the best player he can be. And I think it's outstanding that the Ravens gave him some tools to work with. So now he can really flourish in that Ravens offense, because the defense has been stout from day one. So I expect them to go to the AFC Championship game. I'm saying it today.
My final words with the Baltimore Ravens is, you heard Coach Jones gave some great information. One quick point. The Ravens always is an excellent drafting team. Another player that we should throw in is a young man out of SMU by the way of Brandon Stevens, who's a former running back at UCLA, coming out of SMU. Everybody saying he's the next Wes Hopkins. That was a great player with the Philadelphia Eagles. But when I see the Ravens, I keep it very simple, Coach. It's all about Lamar Jackson improving the deep ball game. He does that. How you going to defend him? And like you said, and the great Bobby Butler always said, he's got the toys now. Yes. So That being said, my final words about the Baltimore Ravens is very simple. It was a guy that I loved back when I was in college. I used to go to every party, and they had him playing. His name was Chuck Brown. He passed a couple of years ago, but he's out of the great city of D.C. by Baltimore. He had a song called Bustin' Loose. Keep it what you got until you get what you need. Give me the bridge now. Lamar Jackson improved his passing game. Yeah. The Ravens, like Coach Jones, is going to be in the AFC Championship, and they might be in the Super Bowl. If you like the video today, please come in and share it. Thank you. I'm Vincent Turner, and thank you for my special guest, the man who knows all about defense out of North Atlanta High School, the best defensive coordinator in the state of Georgia, and the #1 producer. And I will not forget him this evening out of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, my man.
Oak Ridge.
Thank you and God bless this evening here on 100 Yards of Football.
Yes, sir. All right.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Congratulations, guys. Timer's still running, but in theory, we're off the air.
But it said live, so
yeah, it may be off, maybe not. I pressed the button, so maybe we're still in the air for a second here right now. If we are, this is how live television goes.